Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. In today's video we are going to be testing out lots and lots of different kinds of paper to see which one is the best to use with these kinds of markers. So alcohol markers, copics, Promarkers, touch markers, Ohuhu markers, any kinds of markers. Come with me and let's see what we find out. So I tested 14 different types of paper and each one I laid out as you can see in the video now. I tested copy paper as a control, Yupo heavy, Yupo medium, Yupo translucent, some Canson Bristol paper, Winsor and Newton Promarker paper, Crafter's Companion Neenah solar white paper, Strathmore Bristol paper, Shinhanart Touch marker paper, Canson The Wall paper, Crafter's Companion Cardstock, Coleman's Craft Warehouse Cardstock, Clairefontaine Paint on Multi-Technique card or paper, and Crescent Graffiti paper, or I'm calling them paper or cardstock. Anyway, first off I tested the feathering, that is how much they spread out when applied to the paper, and also how much they feather when you apply multiple layers. And I did that by first laying down one layer and then laying down two up into 6 layers, and the ones that weren't so good, when they feather the ink starts to spread outside of the lines, and you will see which ones weren't so good at the end of the video. And I also was looking for bleed through, how much the ink went through to the other side of the paper and maybe even could damage paper underneath, and that was another thing that I was looking for. And I am just using this lovely orange colour here for this test because I didn't want to waste a colour that I use often, and I don't really use oranges very much, so I thought why not use an orange for this part of the test. So after I had tested how many layers the paper could hold, I went on to test its blending properties, and for this I chose 3 corresponding purples. I think it was sugar plum, aubergine and plum from the purple set of Promarkers, and I literally just laid down blocks of colour like this. My preference is to blend from dark to light, so I always lay down my darkest colour and then go in with my medium colour, and in this way I can draw out from the darker colour into the medium colour as a way of blending, and then I take my lightest colour and draw out the medium colour and blend in that way. Other people like to blend from light to dark, it's just a personal preference. I find that I get better results by doing it this way, but however you blend is up to you. And I was really just looking for how well the lines, the edges would disappear when I blended in this way. Finally, I wanted to see how well I could lay down a flat area of colour with these papers, and I am doing that because often I like to colour in a large area of, for example, sky, and that is also why I'm using a light blue pen for this, so that it's easier to see if it's streaky or not. So I'm just laying down 2 or 3 layers over the top of each other, just to see how well this colour lays down. So let's take a look at the results, shall we? First of all, I decided that I would do a control test by using some normal A4 copy paper, and as you can see that the feathering is not too bad when you just draw a straight line, but basically you literally can manage 1 square and it's already starting to feather outside of the lines, and you know, 6 layers of ink and you've just got a catastrophe on your hands. It bleeds through a lot. It bled through onto my desk and I now have a stain that I can't get off, a nice purple stain. The blending is not that great. You can still see the edges of like the difference between especially the light purple and the middle purple. The flat colour is pretty good, probably because it soaks up so much ink that it spreads out really nicely, and this is around 1p per sheet. I'm just doing the prices in English money, I'm not sure what that would be, less than like 1 cent, I guess. So that is the control. That is what it would look like if you just used normal copy paper. Now, I did get some requests to do some Yupo paper, and this is from, or these are from a test pack. So I stuck the 2 test sheets together so you can see. Unfortunately, the Yupo paper does not seem to be a good match for Promarkers. Because it's kind of a plastic surface, you end up with a very, very streaky laydown, and this happened with the Yupo Heavy, the Yupo Light and the Yupo Translucent, and for that reason you just get really bad results with blending, and it's really hard to lay down a flat colour. So then on to the next paper. This is one that I have actually used for a long time. My local art store when I lived back in England was called Coleman's, and I used to go to their craft warehouse, and I have quite a lot of their 200 GSM portfolio card. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't look to be the best kind of card. You get feathering a tiny bit around level 3 layers and then onto 4 layers. And as I'm someone that likes to do a lot of layers, then unfortunately this is not the best card to use. I think I'm going to need to change and use something else. You do get some bleed through even from level 1, and the blending is not too bad. As you can see here, there's no harsh lines between the 3 different shades, and the flat colour is also pretty good. And this works out to be 11 pence per sheet for an A4 sheet. Another one that I have had for a long time from my crafting days is the Crafter's Companion paper. The package doesn't have too much information on it, unfortunately, but it was pretty good with feathering. However, the actual fine liner pen that I used feathered pretty much on this. Wasn't the greatest, although I used the same fine liner on them all. It could also hold around 4 layers of Promarker before it started bleeding. You can see there how it's bleeding out around 6 layers. Not too much bleed through with 1 and 2 layers, so not too bad, but the blending was a bit of a catastrophe there. I did realise that I had swapped my pens around accidentally, so this underneath is where I did it properly, and the blending looks a lot better there than what it does at the top. And a really nice flat lay down there. This one works out at 22 pence per sheet. I'm not sure if I would, if I compare the two, the Coleman's and the Craft Companion, they're very similar. So if I was just going on price, I'd probably take the Coleman's Craft Warehouse purely because they are so similar, there's not a lot of difference. Then I have the Canson The Wall paper, which is 220 GSM. No feathering when you lay it down just like that, and it could take around 5 layers of Promarker here before it started to feather. Tiny little bit of feathering happening at 4, but I gave the benefit of the doubt. The interesting thing about this one was there was absolutely no bleed through. I was shocked when I turned it around. I don't know what happened with it, but there you go. There is no bleed through. So if bleed through is a great a thing that you're looking for, then that is something to think about. It wasn't great with blending. You can still see the lines there between the different colours, and that it kind of pushed the colours outside of the lines, but a really nice flat colour there as well. And this works out to be £1.20 per sheet, but that is for an almost A2 sized sheet, so fairly big size. So if you were cutting that down, it wouldn't, to an A4 to compare with the others, it wouldn't be much more expensive. Then I tested out the Shinhanart Touch marker pad, which is 75 GSM. And this is designed for markers. This is designed for the touch markers, but obviously they're alcohol markers, so they should be similar to the Promarkers. Really nice crisp line there. How many layers? It could take 6 layers, just a tiny bit outside of the lines there on number 6. I think that could have been my colouring and not this paper. Bleed through is supposed to be bleed proof paper. It doesn't actually bleed through to the other side because the other side has a coating, but you can see it from the other side. But you can see this kind of speckled effect, and that is because the other side has a coating, which does mean you can only use one side of this paper. However, I was very, very disappointed with the blending. So it was almost that I wondered if I'd mix my pens up, so I tested it again, but no, the blending is not very good at all, unfortunately, but a really nice flat colour again. And this worked out at 53p per A3 sheet, so you're looking around 26p also for an A4 sheet. Then we have the Strathmore Bristol 300 series. This is a 270 GSM paper and really pretty impressive. It just started bleeding out here around level 5, but I give it the benefit of the doubt and marked level 6 because that's where you can really see that it is just starting to push some of the colour out around the edges. Not too bad with the bleed through. I gave it after level 2 layers that you get more bleed through. Blending wasn't brilliant. You can still see the lines here, but a pretty nice flat colour lay down there. And this works out at 43p for a 9x12 inch sheet, which is just slightly bigger than A4. So this was one of the more expensive papers, so maybe not something to go for if you are looking for a good price. After that, we have the Winsor and Newton Promarker paper. This is also a 75 GSM paper, so really thin. It's the same weight as the Shinhanart paper. And if we look, we've got a little bit of feathering out there at the beginning of the line, but it holds the ink really, really well. Even at 6 layers, we don't get any feathering outside of the lines. I can say I am a bit heavy-handed when it comes to layering, and I have managed to make this paper feather because I put down so many layers. But there you go, 6 layers this one can take at least. Bleed through, it's coated on the back side, so you get this kind of speckly effect, but you can see it from the other side, although it won't bleed through onto other sheets of paper unless you go crazy, I guess. Again, the blending is not really that great, which is one of the things that I find irritating with this paper. The Promarkers tend to dry so fast on it that they don't have time to blend. But a pretty decent flat lay down, a little bit patchy, but not too bad. But the price is pretty good. This one works out at around 11p per A4 sheet as well, depending on where you get it, of course. So onto the Canson Bristol board. This is 250 GSM, and we have a little bit of feathering there on the line, and it could hold up to 6 layers before it started feathering. So there's not an awful lot of feathering there at all. Again, that there was my bad colouring, I apologise. Bleed through, yes, we've got like layer 1 and layer 2 before it starts to really bleed through, so you do need something behind it. A fairly good blend on this one, I was pretty impressed, and a really, really nice flat colour. So this is not bad at all, and 22p per A4 sheet. So this is something that I'm really considering using. It's fairly economical in price, but gives you a fairly good result. Onto the Clairefontaine Paint on Multi-Technique card, which is 250 GSM. Really fairly good straight line. Come on, camera, focus. And no bleeding outside of the lines here, no feathering. So that was really good. You do get some bleed through, not as much as on others. So you've got to, like levels, I keep saying levels, layer 4 or 5 before you really start getting some bleed through. This one I find is pretty good for blending. You've got a bit of a line here, not much there. A bit of a letdown on the flat colour, unfortunately. And this one works out at 24p per A4 sheet. So this is also something to consider if you can get hold of it. And then on to the Crescent Graffiti paper. I haven't got many details of weight and things like that on this one, but pretty good straight line there. And again, it was fine with up to 6 layers of Promarker, so that was really good. Blending, maybe not so good. You've still got the very visible lines there, but a pretty decent flat colour. And this works out at 90p per sheet for a nearly A3 sheet, so about 45p per sheet for A4. And then finally, we have the Neenah Solar White 216 GSM paper. This is a paper that I was recommended when I first started using Promarkers, and I was recommended by the crafting world. As you can see there, a really nice line, nice and crisp, not much feathering at all, and it can cope easily with up to 6 layers of Promarker without feathering. The bleed through onto the back, we've got that it starts mostly around 3 layers. Again, with the blending, you can see there is a little bit of a harsh line there, but not too bad. And the flat colour is not too bad again, not brilliant, but not the worst. And this one works out at 25p per A4 sheet. So if I were going to choose my favourite, I think it would come down to a choice between these two, the Neenah Solar White 216 GSM, just because you can get a pretty decent coverage, fairly decent blending, and a really nice flat colour there. And if I couldn't get hold of that, then I would go for the Canson Bristol 250 GSM. The Neenah wins just because it can hold slightly more layers, but the Canson comes in a close second. So that is my opinion. I would love to know what you think. Have you got any papers that you really love using with Promarkers or Copics? Have you got any that you would like me to try in the future? Do let me know down below in the comments so that I can see if I can get hold of them and give them a test. That would be awesome. I will hopefully see you in my next week's video. For now, have a great week and bye!